Myntri Rangbah ke Jelau Konrad Sangma negasngi habakran berkinong tho khobor ula Pynshai bin pa bin haba ïadei ber ka kai phoj jong ka controller and auditor general CAG report haga negasngi Myntri Rangbah harangkat Commissioner Secretariat jong ka finance department Dr. Vijay Kumar ke la Pynshai pajba bat pensngau thu ki pajba halor ka kai phoj jong ka CAG ban sngau tu shai halor kani tung ine snap ya kajing batai jong Myntri Rangbah Konrad Sangma pat kumjuru kajing Pynshai na Dr. Vijay Kumar Commissioner bat Secretary jong katanat pla tyngka jong sarkar jilla.
Friends, in the last few days we have seen multiple concerns being raised regarding some of the financial numbers that have come out in the CAG report. Consequently, the finance department has submitted clarification on those numbers to clarify on the different aspects and the different concerns that were raised. At the very outset, I would like to just mention to all of you that this entire concern between whether CAG numbers are correct or the state government numbers are correct, I just want to clarify that both are actually in the right direction. Both are actually correct. The question is how and where you place the numbers, which date you take the numbers from, and in which section or under which head do you put certain expenditures. And based on that, the numbers actually come out differently. So that's the reason why CAG has come out with certain reports based on putting certain expenditures under certain heads, which has then inflated numbers in certain way. But if you actually were to remove those numbers from that particular head, which should have been the case, then you will find that what the finance ministry is saying and department is saying is correct. So to give you a more detailed picture on what we are trying to say and what we're trying to share with all of you, we will try to give you a detailed presentation in a simplified manner so that it doesn't confuse you any further. And whenever you have questions, you can always ask the questions. But we're going to lay down all the numbers for you in the most transparent manner to share with you and inform you about the facts and the figures that are there. And based on that, you can obviously make your own judgment on what are the actual facts and where the state stands in terms of finances. So with this opening remark, I would request our Commissioner Secretary Finance to kindly give the presentation, and I would request our press friends.
AG has raised three concerns. One is that the GSDP growth rate is not so good, it's only 10%. So this is the AG report of 22-23. So AG said state's GSDP, which is the state's gross state domestic product, has grown only by 10%, which is less. AG has also said that the fiscal deficit of the state in the year 22-23 as a percentage of the GDP is 6.55, which is high. AG has also said that the debt of the state, overall debt to the GSDP is 43%, which is also high. So these are the three things that the AG has said. So one by one, which we already issued a press release, but I think we want to clarify in much greater detail. So as Honorable CM just mentioned, it is about the timing of the numbers. See, the fundamental first number is the GSDP number, which is the gross state domestic product. So this number is computed over a 4-year period. So for this year, for example, for 24-25, we only have the first estimates. So then we have what is called the Department of Economics and Statistics under the Planning Department, which and their
Second column out there, which says 38,000 for 21-22 and 22,000 and 42,000 for 22-23, and hence the growth rate of 10.09%. During that period, the calculations for the GSDP, which is still going on and is a continuous process, is still happening. But why that is happening, if you go to the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, the MOSPI, the GSDP as per MOSPI, you can see in the third column, this is the actual number which we should believe, I should say. AG did not have this number in the month of June. So this number has come out now only. And if you look at that number, the factual number is 2021-22, our GSDP was 40,000. And as of now, the quick estimates as per MOSPI is for 2022-23 is 46,000. Hence a growth rate of 15.6%. These are not our numbers. These are MOFSP numbers. And as mentioned by the Commissioner and Secretary for Finance, we expect this 46,000 also plus to be having some more improvement in that, but we won't go for that right now. We will stick with what MOFSP has in their official website. This is Government of India, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, has shown in their website that Meghalaya's growth rate is 15.6%. AG, the reason why they put it in June, as I said, is because the numbers available to them that time in June was 38,000 and 42,000. And therefore, what I'm saying is they were right at that point in time because the numbers were only what was available to them. The question of timing, and if you look at the real numbers that have come out now with details, it shows that we're growing at 15.6%.
Slide, please. Now, if you look at post-COVID recovery, so this is another, so we have been saying that in the last 4 to 5 years, Meghalaya is doing very well. So now the numbers, so we are today among the top.
This is not our numbers. This is Government of India's Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation numbers.
So in 2021, at time of COVID, all states, entire country went down. Our GDP was only 33,000. 22-23 is 46. So the growth rate over this period, in this 3-year period, is 17% of Meghalaya. The country has grown at 16.6. So Meghalaya post-COVID is doing well. That is what but we'll now stick to the 46,000 number, which is on the MOFSP part. Next. Now the question of the $10 billion economy. So this is a very interesting, we made 3 scenarios. So we went from the top. If we were to do the first one is the optimistic scenario. If we go with this 17% post-COVID growth rate, we will touch 92,000 crores by 27-28. So that will make us $11.5 billion. The third scenario is, let's say if we took a growth rate of 10 years, the last 10 years. If last 10 years, if we just exclude the COVID year, our growth rate is 10.82. So with that normal last 10 years, we are not taking the good things that are happening in the growth rate in the last 2-3 years. Without that, without taking any of the positives of the last 2-3 years also, at a minimum we will become 80,000 is what the numbers show. From the finance department side, our expected path is the middle path, which is 12.5. We expect we might not, I think 14% or 15% might be too optimistic. 10% or 11% is I think a little pessimistic because we believe that it will be 12.5. So our number, our preferred number is 10.6, which is much higher than, which is higher than 10 billion.
But scenario and a best case scenario. And this is based on the past numbers that are there. And in all the 3 scenarios, we are on track to touch the $10 billion economy which we have been targeting. So therefore, our target is very realistic and we are hopeful that even in a worst case scenario, we should be. But obviously, as I said, these are futuristic things. We need to see how things are. A lot depends on how the next few years go and how we are able to work and bring in investments and go with our growth program and strategy. But if everything goes as planned, as I said, we are expected to cross our 80,000 crore mark, which is a $10 billion economy.
Fiscal deficit. We'll give the copy of the entire presentation.
So just to share with you, we're giving a copy of the presentation to you. So you don't have to click to it.
From the Government of India also collects taxes on behalf of all the states and gives the share to the states. So we get share of central taxes, we have our own taxes and other revenues. So these all are receipts minus our expenditure. That is fiscal deficit. So the overall story across the world is that every country, every state, every city, everybody who has finances is expected to spend a little bit more than what you have, especially because when you spend more, the growth happens. So, and that is how the whole world economy works. So, but there is a limit. If you go beyond limit, that's the problem. So, Government of India has for the long time through what is called the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, all the states have said that there is a limit. 3% was the limit, but in the last 5 years, because of COVID, Government of India is saying, please borrow more and spend more and invest in capital. So they have increased this limit to about 4%. So 4% is the limit of borrowing. That much we have to borrow. We cannot borrow more than that. I think the question of government borrowing more does not arise because this is controlled by Government of India. Every 3 months, Government of India gives us a letter saying that this quarter you can borrow X amount. That letter the finance department sends to RBI. Only then RBI borrows on our behalf. We are not even borrowing. We send the Government of India's permission to Reserve Bank of India, and Reserve Bank of India does the auction, and whatever is the rate at that time, based on that we get the money. So that is how it works. So the question of estate borrowing, this was possible before 2020. Many states, not our state thankfully, but many southern states, Punjab, these states were borrowing what are called as off-budget borrowings. Means without showing in the budget through public sector corporations and all, borrowing was permitted. But in 2020 onwards, every year the finance department, I sign a declaration and we give to finance department, so Ministry of Government of India, saying that we have not done any off-budget borrowings, we have followed all your regulations. We give a signed declaration. Only based on that declaration, they give the what is called the borrowing permission. And this permission goes to Reserve Bank of India, and Reserve Bank of India raises money for the states. This is common procedure for all states. So from 2020 onwards, the system is there. So every state, we get permission only for this 4%. So we cannot go beyond the 4%. Now the question is, if we cannot go beyond 4%, how is our fiscal deficit 6.5%? So this is what AG is also asking, and this is, I think, the main issue which we want to clarify. So what has happened, a very interesting thing that has happened after COVID is, again, Government of India came up with a scheme called SASCI. It's called the Special Capital Assistance to States for Capital Investment. So Government of India said, India has to grow. We have this Viksit Bharat dream. India has to become a developed country. So states have to invest more in capital projects. They have to take up new projects, new roads, new schools, new highways, new buildings, all kinds of new capital projects. So Government of India said, we will give you money to the states. The Government of India will borrow and give to the states as a 50-year interest-free loan. So it's a 50-year interest-free loan will be given to the states. So take this money, invest in capital projects. So, and the special capital assistance scheme comes as one is a normative allotment, which is we get a quota of that money. And
that is a column number 1. So this table on the side, you can see that's a very important table to note. So the normative allotment, what we mean by normative allotment is the allotment or the budgetary allotment that Government of India allows the states to take. So if you can see in the first column, the normative allocation for Meghalaya in 2020-21 is 200. Next year also it was 200. Third year it was increased to 614, and fourth year it was increased to 767. So this is what the normative allotment has been. But then based on our work that we did, the UCs that we submitted on time, all the utilization we did, if you can see the second column, we have able to receive additional amount of you can say bonus, performance-based incentive bonus, and that is where Meghalaya, in fact, in 2022-23, if you look at the last column, our normative allotment was only 614, but we ended up getting 1,049 crores because we were able to utilize the funds and submit the UCs and all the aspects in a very, very quick manner. Now, why this is important? Commissioner Secretary will just give more details.
So basically, this is free money, effective. I mean, anybody who knows numbers. A 50-year interest, even if anybody gives you a 50-year interest free loan, please take it, because it's equivalent to a grant. So in a 50-year interest free loan is equivalent to a grant. It is not a loan at all. But accounting wise, yes, it's a loan. It's a loan Government of India is taking and it is giving to the states. So in this, as Sir said, there is some money that is given to every state as a matter of right. There is some which is performance based. So you submit good DPRs, you submit good projects, you submit the UCs on time. So if you can see, we are one of the better performing states, especially last year. Our normative was 765, not 767. We got 825 crores extra on the performance based on urban reforms, for the construction of Unity Mall, for the construction of digital libraries in 700 villages, for doing police housing. All these are schemes based on DPR and on a first come first serve basis. This year, that is 24-25, we are targeting 2,085 crores under this scheme. Again, our normative is only about 765. So what we are saying is that because we are getting more money under this, so our year is 22-23. 22-23, we got 1,000 crores under this scheme, 1,049.
It is a direction.
Let me complete.
Yeah.
Can AG also issue clarification?
No, they can't. Because you see, it's like this. The point is, AG has been directed to do this process. And this is being done for all states, as we mentioned. Now, Finance Department will have to direct AG that from future, next year onwards, you should come out with a chart like this, where you say fiscal deficit with the capital investment, special investment on special assistance on capital investment. is 6.0, but without it, which is the actual fiscal deficit, is 3.75. So this kind of numbers, so that people are clear that these are two different categories and they should be dealt separately. And those who would like to see the number with the special assistant, then you can see the second column, and those who would like to see it without it would see the third column. As I said, because from all angles, this long-term loan that is there, which is an interest-free loan, which is to be repaid after 50 years, is almost equivalent to a grant. And there is a mechanism for the state government to put funds in the consolidated sinking fund, which then will grow because we are getting interest on that money, and that will be sufficient for us to be able to repay this amount, principal amount, which we're borrowing today, which we have to pay back after 50 years. So we're already making provisions for that.
But sir, the
really interesting projects in the state. So, and as sir said, we are going to, what we are explaining to you, we are going to send a proper letter, a formal letter to the AG explaining that this is what it is, and this will be a problem. This won't be a problem for big states. This is a problem for small states because we are getting huge amount of free money and our GDP is small. For example, if Maharashtra gets, as sir said, if Assam gets big money, so it's not that their fiscal deficit will affect. So therefore, I think the number that we all have to look at is 3.75. So now the debt story, next. 43%. Again, here also it's the same story what we said in the press release. So if we exclude the capital, special capital assistance money from that, our number is 36 and not 43. That's exactly what we said in the press release. So yes, we are not at 28%, it's a fact. So we were even 10 years ago, we were at 30%. So we are today at 36%. But if you look at our projections for the next 5 years, on all the three scenarios, the most optimistic, the normal, and the most probable scenario, we will be by the year 28 within the 28%. We will hit 27.13 in the most pessimistic scenario also. We are taking various steps because it doesn't change in one day, because during COVID time, what has happened is that all state governments were encouraged to borrow more. Government of India allowed us to borrow up to 6%. This is the highest. I think in 21-22, up to 6% was permitted by Government of India. So therefore, the state's debt has increased and also GDP came down. So debt as a percentage of GDP, therefore, is higher. But today our number is 36 and the plan is there. In any growth scenario, we should hit the 28% by 27-28.
So just to sum up this aspect, this is what we call the debt to GSDP ratio. That means the debt amount divided by the GSDP. Why this went up to 36%, as mentioned by Dr. Vijay, that it's not 45%, because 45% is including the special assistant on capital investment. If we were to minus that and not include it in the debt, then we are down to 36%, because as I said, that is not actually in debt. That's number one question. So 36% now. Now why 36% and how it happened? Even before, 10 years back also, as mentioned, we were at 30%. So a number has been always above 28% at large. During the COVID time, the debt ceiling was allowed to be increased by the central government, and obviously we took that because we needed the money, and that increased our debt. But at the same time, our expenditure, our GSDP went down. So when the denominator is going down and the numerator is going up, so obviously the percentage obviously goes up. So we saw the entire process of this debt to GSDP ratio hit very badly during the COVID time. But having said that, as we expect our GSDP to go up, and we have shown the scenarios to you that even at a 10% growth, which is a very, very pessimistic number and very conservative number, we are still looking at an 80,000 crore economy that we are moving towards. So our GSDP is poised to go up in the next 4 years, 3 to 4 years time. As GSDP goes up and as we control our debt, which is obviously, as I said, Government of India is very, very particular. It is Government of India that gives us the permission to borrow. It is the Reserve Bank that ultimately borrows and gives us the money. So there is no way, even if we want to take, we can't take unless RBI and thing. So all these caps are put in, and we expect that the trend, as you said in this, as you can see in this chart, the three scenarios, that numbers out there are actually percent. So that's 27.13%, 25.94%. And in a best case scenario, where we expect to touch almost about 96,000 crores in terms of our economy, we are looking at a 24.41%. in terms of our debt to GSDP ratio. So this is the scenario for and the explanation for what the AG has said. Has absolutely no issue with that, and absolutely we are in no question of getting to a debt trap. As I said, the way Finance Ministry, Government of India works today, they are monitoring every single rupee that the government borrows, and they only permit up to the level which is permissible as per the rules and norms laid down by Finance Ministry. So even if we want to borrow, we can't borrow. So therefore the question of us going and crossing the limit does not arise, because ultimately it is the RBI that is going to fund. So if we are going to fall into debt trap, next year Government of India and RBI will not allow us to borrow anymore. So it's as simple as that.
So what step is the government?
Every year to year. So on the debt trap, the final thing is, I think AG has made a comment of a debt trap looking at the 43% number. But now that we know it is not 43, it is 36. So there is a huge 8% difference. So obviously the question of debt trap does not arise, and we are on the path to consolidation. Now on the budgetary numbers, so this is another thing that happens in every exit conference we do. So what AG expects, and it's good practice, is that the budget should be tight. That means if we announce a budget of 25,000 crores, we should make an expenditure of 25,000 crores. So there is always some kind of what we call surrender at the end of the year. So for even in the last year, when our budget expenditure was 21,800 crores, our budget was 27,000 crores. So there's a 5,000 gap. So AG says, why budgeting? This we explain every year, which is that we are dependent on the CSS. So when we make the budget, we expect that under SSA we will get 600 crores, 800 crores. We only end up getting maybe 400 crores. So therefore in CSS, typically we over budget. So, and this is a problem again of smaller states which are dependent on Government of India. Larger states, they don't depend so much on Government of India schemes. So their budgeting is a little more tighter. But in our states, we sometimes budget more optimistically for the CSS, because suddenly last year, for example, PMAY, we got 1,700 crores. But we only made a budget provision of 1,000. Then we had to again, wait for assembly to make the budget provision, because if you don't have budget provision, even when you have the money, you can't draw the money. So that is the reason.
That's why SD is done.
That is the reason why there is a little bit of over budgeting. This is more of a procedural issue. Of course, in state schemes also, sometimes departments are more optimistic that they can spend more money. So we are constantly, in fact, sir, many years ago, the gap between the budget and the expenditure was much higher. Now we are slowly closing the gap. But yes, so this is the reality. There is a real problem, because Government of India announced its budget on the 1st of February. So we make our budget based on Government of India's numbers. But Government of India says in SSA we'll give 10,000 crores. But they don't say how much they give for Meghalaya. That comes only after 3-4 months when ministries have their meetings and all. So therefore everybody is guessing. So therefore there is bound to be some bit of slack in the overall budget making.
Growth is basically the GSDP growing. So when you look at the GSDP, it involves everything from government investment, government spending, to private investment that takes place, to the overall consumption that takes place. So growth in the economy is when we see the gross state domestic product grow. So that is what the growth factor is. So today, say for example, if we have a large investment that comes into say the private sector in say power, so that will add to the GSDP of the state. Tomorrow we end up building up a large say state secretariat. Now that's expenditure from the government side. That adds to the government's expenditure, and that adds to the GSDP. So tomorrow, next year, when we say an additional expenditure of 500 crores on that goes into the GSDP calculation, and tomorrow we will see the GSDP grow. So therefore, growth means basically economic growth, means basically expenditure, increase in consumption, government expenditure, private investments coming in, net exports, next import-export. So all these factors lead to the growth, and that's what it is.
What about human resource development? I pointed out about the health, education.
So you're talking about two different things. That's the reason why a lot of governments today talk about whether GDP or GSDP is actually the only way or the right way for any government to look at the overall performance of the economy and the government. So you're asking two different aspects. And I, for one, subscribe, in fact, to that particular thought process. And that's the reason why, if you look at the Vision 10 document that we have shown, why have we said that we want to go for a $10 billion economy? Now, $10 billion economy means we will double our economy in whatever 7, 8, 10 years which we have planned. But is that enough? Now, is it enough to just have that? and yet not having the health sector and the education sector and the farmers and the women and the youth benefit from it. That's the reason why, if you had read my vision document, you would have realized that while we talk of Vision 10, we also talk of 10 opportunities, we talk of 10 commitments. What are these commitments? These commitments are that when we achieve the $10 billion economy, we will not forget that we have to also give back to society in terms of the health investments. So we have talked about how we will transform and work towards the health sector. So the $10 billion economy should happen, but while that happens, it should also help the education, it should help the youth, the women, the health sector, and those are the social aspects which you're talking about. And hence the Vision 10 document, thank you for asking this question, it's helping me to clarify. That is the whole idea of ensuring that we have a balanced growth. We have a growth that will ensure that every section of society is taken on board while we're moving forward, and that's how an economy should grow. This debate is a very large debate, in fact, at the global level also, and that's why nations like Bhutan have come out with something that they call the Gross Happiness Index, because they feel that just GSDP or GDP is not a fair enough number to judge the overall happiness, growth, and social justice at the grassroots level. So it's a much larger debate, but I don't think we have time to go into all of that. But yes, a valid question, and that's what the scenario is. So GDP is one part, but the social justice in terms of ensuring that different sectors are helped is another aspect. And that is why our vision document focuses on all these aspects, not only on the $10 billion economy, but how to reach this $10 billion economy in terms of 10 opportunities that we have where we can focus on, and in terms of the 10 commitments that we have towards health, women, social welfare, education, so on and so forth.
Well,
And allowed me to clarify. The CAG report, which mentioned about 400 UCs that have not been submitted, are purely state UCs, which means the Education Department of Government of Meghalaya, the UCs which have to be submitted to the Finance Department of Government of Meghalaya have not been submitted by our own state department. The UCs that have been submitted by the Health Department of Government of Meghalaya to the Finance Ministry for the funds, Finance Ministry Government of Meghalaya, for the funds we have given to them, have not been submitted by our own departments. This has nothing to do with the UCs. Not a single one of them has anything to do with the UCs of Government of India. So whether Government of Meghalaya owes or has to submit any UCs to Government of India, yes, maybe one or two UCs here and there, the normal ones are pending, but not the scale of the 400 plus that was mentioned. These are purely Meghalaya government's internal UCs expected by the Finance Ministry of Government of Meghalaya from the departments of the Government of Meghalaya, because that's how accountability is held, and this is an internal government exercise, which is a good thing, because the state governments also, the state departments also, they have to be accountable. When we give the money, they have to give the Finance Ministry the UC, so that our ministry, which means state governments, to get it. So that is what the CAG has mentioned. It has nothing to do with the UCs of central government.
what's our 400?